We begin the Gemara today on top of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, the second line from the top of the Yamud. We're in the middle of an inyan. The Gemara is discussing what it said in the Mishnah that Me'ilois are considered to be Arorin Atluyim B'Saira, like mountains that are hanging on a hair, because you don't have a clear source in the Torah for the halacha of Me'ilois. So the Gemara went through different options of explaining exactly which halacha of Me'ilois is this referring to. And the Gemara refuted the pshatim that we said before, and the Gemara now tries another pshat. Elami Seifer, the Seifer of the Mishnah that we quoted before. And it says there as follows. Bana b'toich beisai. If a person takes from Hektish, and according to what the Gemara said before, this is actually talking about the Gizbar of Hektish itself, and he took something from Hektish and he built it into his house. Harei ze loy moal, he did not do any me'ila yet, ad sheyode tachta b'shava pruta, until he actually lives there under this piece of wood or whatever it is that he took from Hektish, and then he has Hana, Shava Pruta, that's when he's Moil. So how do we understand this halacha? Mechti, let's see. Shinui Shanye. He took an object and he built it in. So he changed it from what it was when it belonged to Hektish. So he should be Moil right then. Mali Dar or Mali Loy Dar. What difference does it make if he actually lived there and had Hana from it like that, or even without Hana? He already changed it. That is the Me'ila itself. Hainu kaharorin atluyim b'saira. So this is the halacha that has no source. It's like a hair hanging on a mountain. It's very hard to understand what this means. So the Gemara says, no, there is actually an explanation for this. My kushya, what's the question? Dilme liked Rav. Maybe the pshat is like Rav explained this Mishnah. The Omar Rav said, what does it mean when it says that he built it into his house? Doesn't mean that Mamish built it in. Rather, what it means is kagon shehi nicha al pi aruba. He placed it on top of a skylight, which was an opening, and he put it there to cover it. So it wasn't built in. He didn't really change the object of Hektish by placing it there. It's just placed on top. So therefore, with that alone, he's not Moil. If he goes under there, and now it protects him, and he had a gnaw from it, that's when he's Moil. So Yidar Be'in, if he lives under it, then he's Moil. And Loy Dar Be'loy. But if he did not live under it, then he's not Moil. So therefore, this halacha is very simply understood. So the Gemara goes back and says, Ela la'olam kiderava. The halacha, that's like a mountain that's hanging on a hair, regarding Me'ilois, is going back to what Rava said before. What did Rava say before? In the case of a person that sent a shliach with money, that the balabas did not know it was Hektish money. The shliach did not know that it's Hektish money. Then the balabas himself reminds himself, but at that point it's too late. The shliach has already gone. And the shliach had no idea that the money that he's using is Hektish money. So what is the halacha that it said before in the Braisa? That the shliach that used this money, he was Moil. He did the Aveda, not the Balabas. And the Gemara before said that that's also a halacha that has an explanation. It's not a big wonder. Why? Because the halacha of Me'ila is always applying only to a Chagigah. Anytime a person uses money and he uses it b'Chagigah, that's the halacha of Me'ila. So it's the same thing with the shliach. The shliach that got the money from the balabas, and the shliach had no idea if it's Hektish money or not, and he went and he used it, the shliach will be Moil, even though he didn't know. That's what the Gemara asked before. So now the Gemara explains, no, it's not the same thing. Again, la'olam kiderova. Really, the halacha that's a wonder, that's like a hair hanging, like a mountain hanging on a hair, is like what Rava said before. The kakashilach, and the question we asked before was, Midi dahava amaitzi mois hektish l'chulin. A shliach that spends money and he did not know that that money was hektish is the same like any person that spends money that he thought was hektish and he thought it was chulin actually, and it turns out to be hektish. So that's Me'ila b'Chagigah. So what's unique about this case? But the Gemara explains there's a big difference. Hasam made the yoda the ikezuzi the hektish. When you're talking about the owner of the money that he has chulin money, he has Hektish money, so he knows he has Hektish money. He should have paid attention to make sure that he's not using Hektish money. So even though he's a Chagigah, but the person is to some degree at fault for the fact that he didn't pay attention. But over here, when you're talking about the shliach, mi yoda. Does he have any idea that this is Hektish money? There's no way in the world he should have known about this. How should he be careful about this? And still we say that the shliach is Moil, and he has to bring a carbon, and all the halachas of Me'ila apply to him. Hainu kaharorin atluyim b'saira. Therefore, it's considered to be like a mountain hanging on a hair, because this comparison to every shagig is not exactly, he's not a regular shagig. He's almost like an einus. So the fact that we're considering him to be a shagig and not an einus, so it's like hanging on a thin hair. This comparison is not a very, very, very smooth comparison. That's the pshat b'negeya to me'ilos.
What's Me'ilah b'mezid called?
Me'ilah b'mezid, all the halachas do not apply. The carbon and the chaimish don't apply. Only by a shagig. Me'ilah b'mezid, you have to pay back. It's like but the halachas of Me'ilah don't apply. We'll learn them at Hashem in Masechta Me'ilah. We'll get there. Sagt die Gemara weiter, it said in the Mishnah, Mikra muat v'halachas merubais. The Gemara brought a list of things that there's very few psukim about it, and there's many halachas. So in the Braisa it says, Tana we learned Negayim v'Alais. The halachas of Negayim and the halachas of Alais regarding Tumah, Mikra muat, there are very few psukim about it, v'halachas merubais. And there are many halachas. So the Gemara asks, Negayim, Mikra muat. Regarding Negayim, there are very few psukim. Negayim Mikra merubahu. Regarding Negayim, there are many psukim. You have the two parshas of Tazriya and Metzayra. Almost the entire two parshas all talk about the halachas of Negayim. Rav Papa said, you're right, you have to change it. Hachi ka'amar, this is what the Braisa is meant to say. Negayim, the halachas of Negayim, Mikra merubah. You have a lot of psukim about this. V'halachas muatais. And there's less halachas and mishnayis about it. In contrast, irrelevant to the psukim. Always, when it comes to the halachas of the Tumah and the Oyel, it's the reverse. Mikra mu'at, there are very few psukim about this. V'halachis merubis. And in relevance, in contrast to the psukim, there are many halachis and mishnayis about this. My nafkimina. Why is this important to know? Whether there's more psukim about it, or whether there's more mishnayis about it. If you have a doubt, you're trying to figure out a halacha regarding the goyim, ayin b'kroi. The first place you should look is into the psukim, because the psukim themselves, there's a lot of psukim about it. If you have a question about a halacha of alais, the tumah and alais, ayin b'masnisin. You should look into the mishnayis, because there's very few psukim. You won't really see the answer to your question in the psukim. Dinin. The next thing it said in the Mishnah was about the dinin. So what did it say in the Mishnah regarding the dinin? So the lashon of the Mishnah was that the dinin is part of the list of things that yeshlam amashi yismeichel. Right? That's the Mishnah brought a list of things over here that it says dinin and so on. Yeshlam, they have what to rely upon. There's psukim that they have to rely upon. What does that mean that they have what to rely upon? Michtav ksiven. The halachas of the dinim, which refers to all dinim mamanis, all those halachas say clearly in the Torah. You have a lot of them in Parshas Mishpatim regarding all the halachas of the Nezikin and so on. So why are we saying that it has what to rely upon? That says the Gemara, the Mishnah was referring to the following halacha that Rebbe said that's not so clear in the Torah. The Tanya, the Rebbe said, Rebbe yoyme nefesh tachas nefesh, that you have to take a soul for a soul. This is talking about a person that was fighting with someone, and then by mistake he killed someone without having the kavanah to do so. Right? So the Rashi here brings the story that the osin yiyev and asat nefesh tachas nefesh, that he did something that was not his intention at all. Okay, so he killed, but shaloi b'chavana. So when it says in the pasuk nefesh tachas nefesh, Rabbi says what this means is mammon. In such a case, because the person didn't intend to kill, so therefore it means that he has to pay money. You say that all it means is money. Maybe it means that you have to take his life literally. It says the term v'nasata here, and it says the term v'nasata before, and this is talking about when the woman miscarries because of what the person did, and over there it clearly says in the pasuk that he only has to pay the value, the money of the babies that they did not survive. So just like over there, mala alon mamayin, just like over there, it does not mean that you have to take his life, but it's talking specifically about money, as it says clearly in the pasuk, afkan mamayin. So to nefesh over here only means money. Okay, so this is exeida shava. So it's not clear in the pasuk, but the Mishnah says yeshlam amashi yismeichu because it's exeida shava. Then it said avodas. The avodas in the Beis Hamikdash also have what to rely upon. Fragt the Gemara michtav ksivan. It says the avodas in the Beis Hamikdash. It says clearly in the psukim, in Parshas Vayikra, Tzav, and so on. What does it mean? It has what to rely upon. And it says the Gemara leinitzrecha ella loilochas hadam. It's referring specifically to the avodah of delivering the blood from where the animal is shechted to the mizbeach. That is also considered to be an avodah done by the kohanim. and that all the halachas of the Aveda applies, which means if a person has the wrong machshava when he does the Aveda, he can make it pigul. So this is a chiddush, that the halacha of the blood is considered to be an Aveda. The Tanya, we learned in the Braise, when it says in the Torah, that he brings the blood to the Mizbeach, zu kabbalas adam. It's referring to receiving the blood of the animal. But the Torah uses the term ve'krivai, which also means to bring it, to deliver it to the Mizbeach, to bring it close. Like we see in another pasuk, it says, v'hikriv ha'koyin es ha'koil v'hikter ha'mizbecha. In that pasuk, it's talking about the pieces, the parts of the carbon that are brought to the Mizbeach. So there it says v'hikriv. So over here as well, when it says v'krivai, it means that you should bring the blood to the Mizbeach. Regarding the pasuk v'hikriv ha'koyin, so it was explained that zuay lochas evarim lekevesh. It means bringing the pieces of the carbon to the ramp of the Mizbeach. So lememre, the reason the Torah writes over here by the blood as well, the term v'hikrivai, to teach you the halacha lo yitafka michlal kabbalah, that do not take the halacha of the blood out of the category of Kabbalah. Just like receiving the blood is a Aveda, and like I mentioned, all the halachas of the Avedas apply. It's done by a kohen. If you have the wrong machshav, it's pigul. The same thing with the halacha. As Rashi here says, even though halacha is a kind of Aveda, that it's not always necessary to do. If the behemoth was shechted right near the Mizbeach, there is no halacha. But when it's shechted further away, and you do need to do halacha, then the halacha will be part of the Aveda that applies, and a kohen does it, and so on. Then it said in the Mishnah, Tarais, the halachas of Tarais, also have what to rely upon.
The iktir means,
yeah,
it means a kol dam. But it's at first that what the halacha. You could have said that what? That the halacha is part of the thing.
But this is the pasuk. The krivai is the pasuk where you learn Kabbalas Adam from, though. There's no other pasuk for Kabbalas Adam. So Ve'krivai teaches us both. It's going on the Kabbalas Adam. That's how you bring it to the Mizbeach, when you receive the blood, but it wrote it in this Lashon to include also the halacha, both. That's what the Gemara is explaining. It said in the Mishnah... If what? So this, no. These are the things that the Mishnah said, that Yeshla Mamashi Yismoichu. Yeah, it's more than that. It has a pretty good source, even though it's not clear, but it has a good source. Tarais, the Mishnah said also it has what to rely upon. Frek the Gemara, what does it mean it has what to rely upon? Michtav Ksivin, the halachas of how you become tar, says clearly in the Torah. Answers the Gemara, Lenitzracha ela l'shir mikveh. What it's saying is, the shiur of a mikveh, which is 40 saw, it's not written clearly in the pasuk, but it has a good source. The loy ksiv doesn't say it clearly. The Tanya learned na Braise, v'rochatz b'mayim. So the pasuk, the way it's written is, v'rochatz b'mayim es kol b'sorei. Right, so what do we learn from this? B'mei mikveh, that it has to be done in a mikveh. How do we know that it's in a mikveh? Not in any water. B'mikveh means it has to be rainwater and not mayim shuvim, drawn water. Rashi says because the pasuk says ba mayim. It doesn't say be mayim. It says ba mayim with a pasach. And when it says ba mayim with a pasach, it means unique, specific waters, and therefore it refers dafka to rainwater and not any other kind of water. That's how Rashi explains this. And then it says es kol b'sadai, the entire flesh of the body has to be in the water, which means mayim shekol gufay oila behen. You have to have enough water that the entire body could be covered by this water. V'kama hein, how much amount of water is this? Ama al ama, an amma by an amma wide, and berum shalosh amas, with the height of 3 amas, which is the size, the height of a person. Tosfos actually brings from other places that you see that it says that the height of a person is actually 4 amas, not 3 amas. And Tosfos says that yes, without the head it's 3 amas, but when a person tovels, he can maneuver himself or bend down his head, and he can get his whole body into the water, even with the height of the water that's 3 amas. And don't forget, when you go into the water, so the water rises with your body entering into the water. The shiur chachamim, and the chachamim came and said the shiur of how much is in this amount of water of a amma by a amma with the height of 3 amas. May mikveh arbaim saw, that this is an area that contains within it 40 saw. That's the minimum size of a mikveh. So it doesn't say it clearly in the Torah, but it has a pretty good source here because of the words as kol b'sadei, that means this amount that the whole flesh of the person could enter into. Tumais, it said in the Mishnah that tumais have a source in the Torah. In fact, the Gemara mechtav ksiven, the halachas of tumah, says clearly in the Torah, answers the Gemara lo nitzrecha. This is what it says here, that it has what to rely upon. Sorry. Le'nitzracha el lecha adasha. This is the halacha of the minimum size for a person to touch a sheretz to become tamei, which is the size of a lentil. Kadashim and sheretz. The like siva. That's not something that says clearly in the pasuk. So what's the source? The Tanya learned in the Braisa. It says in the pasuk bohem that you touch a sheretz. Then yachal bekulam. So from this pasuk, I would think only if you touch the entire sheretz, even if it's larger than a adasha, only then will you be tamei. Tamid Laimar, so in another pasuk regarding the sheretz, it says mayhem, that anything that mayhem from a sheretz, even a part of a sheretz, could also make you tamei. So yachal b'miktzasan, so I would think that any tiny drop of a sheretz will make you tamei. Tamid Laimar bahem, but on the other hand, the Torah says bahem, which means the whole sheretz. So what is the amount? Okay, so what does this mean? Chagigah b'miktzasai shuhu kekulai. If you touch a part of a sheretz, which is as large as the whole sheretz, as the smallest sheretz that there is, then you become tamei. And shiur chachamim b'ka'adasha. And chachamim said that this is the amount of a size of a lentil. That's the smallest sheretz. Why? Sheken chaymet, because this sheretz, that's called a chaymet, whatever it is, some kind of a sheretz, tchilasai b'ka'adasha. As soon as it's born, it's the size of a lentil. So that's the smallest sheretz, which is the shiur that will make you tamei. Rabbi Yosi by Yehuda. A what? What's a chaymet?
A turtle?
Whatever. No, it could be. I don't know. Rashi says a ligma. Okay, I forgot to check out what the English word for this is.
A god will be clipped, no?
Maybe it's a turtle. Could be. Okay, could be. Could be. Yeah. Yeah. Rabbi Yosi by Yehuda. Rabbi Yosi by Yehuda says that the shiur of a adasha, of a lentil, comes from something else. Kizonov halta. It's like the tail of this halta, another kind of sheretz. So Rashi explains that this tail, even after you cut off this tail, it will like have life sort of on its own for some time, and therefore it's considered to be something that it's like a full piece that has life of its own from the sheretz, and therefore that's the size that if you touch it, you become tamei. Then it said in the Mishnah Arayis, that the halachas of Arayis also have what to rely upon. Fragt the Gemara mechtik sivan, it says it clearly in the Torah. Answers the Gemara, le'nitzrecha le'bitoi men anusasai. We need a source, and that's not so clear in the Torah, for a daughter from an anusa. If a person had a relationship with a woman by force, or it doesn't make a difference if it was by force or not by force, the Gemara is choosing the example of by force, and it's not his wife. So regarding a person that has, if it's his wife, and it's your daughter, or even if it's your wife's daughter and not your daughter, that it says clearly in the Torah. But bitay manusasai like siva. That does not say clearly in the Torah. Rashi actually points out an interesting thing. If you look in the Psukim, it talks about a granddaughter that comes from an anusa. That it does say clearly in the Torah. But a daughter, it does not say. And Rashi says the klal is you don't give an einish minadin based on a kal v'chomer. So even though you can make a kal v'chomer and say if the Torah asad the granddaughter that comes from an anusa, for sure the daughter should be yaser, but we have a klal, ein mazhirin minadin, you can't give a person a warning based on a kal v'chomer, and you can't give an einish minadin. So therefore we need to have a source to say that the daughter from an anusa will be yaser. Rav said, Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi told me, Asye, we learned this out with Gzeira Shava. Heina. It says regarding a daughter from a wife, it says there, Ervascha Heina. Rashi brings the pasuk here. So that's talking about a woman that he's married to. And then it says also, Benigeya to an anusa. So the Torah also says over there the lashon of Heina. Which brings the pasuk over here, remember the pasuk. It also says the term Heina. Shara Heina, She'era Heina Zimihi. Sorry. So the pasuk that it says by a wife is She'era Heina Zimihi. Then the pasuk that it says by the anusa, it says ervascha heina. So therefore we learn out heina to compare them, that both of them, the daughter will be asa, and also asya zima. We learn out the word zima, even though it only says zima by a wife, it does not say zima by an anusa. This zima in the pasuk means that it's sreifa, that you have to burn, that the chiyuv is sreifa. But once we compare the two with the Gzeira Shava of heina, we also learn out that the punishment of sreifa that it says by a daughter of a wife also applies to a daughter of an anusa. So this is the limud, and this is what the Mishnah meant when it said that you have what to rely upon with this limud. The last thing it said in the Mishnah concluded, Hein gufei Torah. This is the Torah itself. So what's the simple pshat of the Mishnah? The Mishnah said a bunch of things. It spoke first about those things that are haror and atluyim b'saira. or actually even before that, it spoke about the Het and the Dorim. It said that it's like flying in the air, has no source at all. Then it gave a whole list of things that are like mountains hanging on a hair. Then it brought a list of things that it said it has a solid source. And the Mishnah concludes, Hainen Gufei Torah. So it seems like the Mishnah is saying, only these last things that have a good source, they are part of Torah. So the Gemara asks him this, Haniin, only these that have a good source are part of Torah, Hanach Loi? Everything else that's mentioned there is not going to be part of the Gufei Torah. How could you say that? Even if it doesn't have a clear source in the Torah, but still, it's also part of Gufei Torah. So rather, the way to read the Mishnah is, after all the things that it says, some have a good source, some don't have a good source, what the Mishnah is concluding with is, Hein v'hein, you have to add a vav here. Hein v'hein, meaning whether the things that have a good source, whether the things that don't have such a good source, Gufei Torah. They're both part of the Torah itself, and you have to keep them in the same way. Adron Allah Hakol Chayavim. This is the conclusion of the first Perek of Masechta Chagigah. Zok the Mishnah, this Perek actually will also continue with certain halachas regarding Chagigah and Yontif and so on, as we'll see, but because it's brought up in the previous Mishnah, Arayis, so it brings over here different things from Arayis and then other things related to it, and we'll have a lot of Agadah over here, and then we'll get back to the halachas of Yontif. So the Heilige Mishnah in Darshan Ba'arayis B'shloisha. You don't expound upon the halachas of Arayis in the presence of three people. Has to be less than that. And v'loi b'maaseh bereishis, and not to teach also the things about maaseh bereishis in connection to creation and the science of creation and so on. That's a simple pshat of the Mishnah. Taisus here, however, brings in the name of Rabbeinu Tam that there's a name of Mem Beis Oisius that comes from the pasuk of Bereishis in the following pasuk. So that in Shem of the Eibishter you don't teach b'shnayim if there's two people there. V'loi b'merkava b'yachid, and then the what?
You need more people?
Less than two people. V'loi b'merkava b'yachid. And the inyanim of Ma'aseh Merkava, speaking about what's Lamaila and Ma'aseh Merkava, even with one person, you don't teach that. Elam kain, unless hayachacham umevin midaitai. If he's wise and he understands, he has the knowledge and to understand on his own. Sagt the Mishnah, a person that looks at these four things, rasui loi, this is a very unusual lashon. Rasui loi means it's befitting for him, it's good for him, as if he never came to the world, he should have never been born. So what is these things that a person shouldn't look at? Mala maila, if a person starts thinking about and analyzing what's above all the heavens, mala mata, what's below all the heavens, Ma'alifnim, what's before the world was created, Ma'alachir, what's after. There's certain things that a person can't understand, and there's no point to think about them because it'll just come to you, it'll just bring you, that is, to have all kinds of questions that you can't answer. And also, a person that does not have the proper honor for his creator, and the Gemara will explain exactly what this means. So it's befitting for him, it's the right and good thing for him that he should have not came into the world at all. So going back to what it said in the Mishnah, so the way the Gemara understood the Mishnah is, when it says Shloisha, Shnayim, and Yachid. Shloisha means three people that are present, including the teacher. Shnayim means two people present, including the teacher. That's teaching, so he's teaching one person. And then when it says V'loi b'merkava b'yachid, what does that mean? That you should not learn Ma'aser Merkava even totally alone. That's what it seems like. So the Gemara asks, first you say V'loi b'merkava b'yachid, that you should not be expounding and learning the inyanim of Merkava, even a yachid, which means totally alone. But then you say that if it's a person which is wise and he understands, he could learn it alone. So Rashi says the Gemara's question is, if this person is learning it alone and he doesn't need a teacher to teach it to him, he's obviously a person that's a chacham and mevim midaitai. No one has to teach it to him. And still it said that alone he should have learned it. So how could you say right afterwards that if he understands and he could learn it on his own, that he should learn it? So the Gemara answers, no, we got the whole thing wrong. This is how we have to read the Mishnah. Ein darshan be'arayis, you don't expound on the halachas of arayis, le shloisha. Not three people including the teacher, but a teacher that's teaching three people besides himself. And the same thing, v'loi b'maaseh bereishis le shnayim. He's teaching the things of maaseh bereishis to two people besides himself. And v'loi b'merkava le yachid. And a teacher that's teaching the maaseh merkava for a yachid. So you shouldn't teach a yachid. So it's two people really, the teacher and the student. If the teacher sees that the student that he's teaching is a chacham and meiven midaitai, so then he could teach him.
What's meiven midaitai mean?
Meiven midaitai, versteht? The student.
So what's he teaching him?
He's teaching him because there's things that he doesn't know. But as Rashi says, he sees that it's a kind of student that when he's going to teach him, he's going to understand right away. He's not going to have any sfeikis. He's not going to start asking all kinds of questions, and then he's going to come to the wrong pshat. But as soon as I'll teach him, he'll understand right away. So the Gemara, it said in the Mishnah, you don't teach the halachas of arayis if it's 3 people. It has to be less than that. So the question is, my time. What's the reason for this? Where is the source for this thing that you don't teach arayis to 3 people? If you're going to say that we're going to darshan from a pasuk as follows. By arayis, the pasuk says, ish, al kol she'er b'sarai. And it says there in the pasuk, like sikrivu legalas erva. So you shouldn't come close to be megala arayis. So simply talking about the isser of arayis, literally. But if you hear the Gemara wants to say, maybe we should darshan this also regarding teaching the halachas of arayis. And we'll read the pasuk as follows: ish trei. It says twice ish, so that's 2 people. And then it says she'er b'sarai chad. So that's another 1 person. So that's 3 altogether. The Torah is telling you that when there's 3 people present, you shouldn't teach. These are halachas that you can only teach very privately. Only for 2 people or less, not 3. That's how we'll darshan this pasuk. So the Gemara says, Elamiyata, if this is how you darshan this pasuk, so if so, there's other places you find similar. The pasuk says, ish ki yikalol alakov. If a person, chas v'shalom, says the opposite of a bracha on the Eibishter, so why does it say here twice? Ish. So should I? And also another pasuk, it says, ish asher yitim mizari l'maylach. A person that gives his child to the avodah zarah of maylach. So hachanami, are you going to darshan the same thing? That those are halachas that you could only darshan in the presence of 2 people? Because it says ish. So you can't darshan it this way. Ella, so what's the pshat? Why does the Torah write twice ish? Hanami bayale. The fact that it says twice ish, we need that for a drasha. What is the drasha? It's saying that not only a yid, but even a guy is also being warned not to blaspheme Hashem's name and not to serve avodah zarah. If so, hi nami, over here as well regarding the term of ish that it says by arayis, mi bayale, it's coming to teach me that there are certain arayis that goyim are being warned on, just like the Yidden as well. So that's not the source. So the Gemara tries another source from a pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ushmartem es mishmarti," that you should keep the halachas that the Torah tells you to keep. So this double lashon ushmartem es mishmarti, so it teaches me as follows: Ushmartem, it's a plural term that you more than 1 should keep. So this is trei. So this you teach this amongst 2 people. And then it says again mishmarti chad. That's 1 more. V'amarachmana. Then the Torah says, "Levilti asais michukes hatayeves," speaking about the things that are abominable, the things of arayis. So we're going to learn from here that you teach these halachas only in the presence of 3 people, only 3 people or less than 3 people. It has to be less than 3 people, so that's the source. If this is the source, if so, the pasuk says by Shabbos, ushmartem es Shabbos. Or shmartem es mitzvah. So there's another pasuk b'chlal by mitzvahs, and it says shmartem es l'shmeres hakodesh. All of these terms, hachanami, are you also going to darshan this way to say that you can only teach it amongst 2 people? So you can't darshan this way. Elam Ravashi, so Ravashi says, "My ein darshan b'arayis b'shloisha." What does it mean when it says that you don't darshan the halachas of arayis unless there's 3 people there? It doesn't mean those halachas of arayis that are clear that everybody knows about. Rather, it means ein darshan b'sisrei arayis. It's referring to those halachas which are called sisrei arayis. As Rashi explains, what it means is the halachas of arayis that are not clear in the Torah. Certain halachas that you have to teach that are not. Rashi brings the example of what we had before, the daughter of an anusa, or a mother of a father-in-law, mother of a mother-in-law. These are different halachas that are learned from drashas, but they're not clear in the Torah. So those things that people don't know, and it's not clear in the Torah, over there, you don't darshan it if there's 3 people. Why? My time, the reason for this, svarahu. You don't need a source for this. This is logical. Why? Because we're afraid people are going to misunderstand. Because today, if a teacher is teaching to 2 students, when they sit in front of their teacher, so one student could discuss the matter with his teacher, And the idach, and then the other student, matzli udnei l'gemara. He can listen very closely to the svaris that are being discussed amongst them, and he writes it down, so he can hear very clearly. So there won't be any confusion. But if there are 3 students, what could happen? One of them is going to discuss the halachas with his teacher about this. And then v'hanach trei, while he's discussing it with his teacher, the other 2, they may also have a discussion with each other. And they're not going to clearly hear the halachas that the teacher said about this. And then they're going to come to be matter, certainly surim by arayis, because they won't hear clearly. So in these things that people don't know, all the sisrei arayis, that people don't know the details, we want it to be only 2 students to be sure that they're paying attention and hearing what the teacher is saying. Frag the Gemara, Yochi kol ha-Torah nami. Why don't you say the same thing regarding any other Yisurim in the Torah? Why shouldn't we be concerned the same thing, that they're not going to hear clearly the halacha? And it says the Gemara, Arayis Shani. By Arayis we're more concerned. No Mamar, because the Master said, Gezel va'Arayis nafshem achmadason u'misava lehem. Both Gezel and Arayis are things that there's a strong taiva that a person has for this, so he may come to misinterpret and be lenient in order to be mad to something. Fragt the Gemara, so Yachi Gezel Nami. So you mentioned over here that it's not only Arayis. Gezel is also something that people have a big taiva for. So the Gemara answers it's not the same. Arayis, bein befonov, ben shaloi befonov, nafesh yitzrei. When it comes to Arayis, whether it's in front of the erva, whether or not the person's yetzer is very strong, so he might be mad to something. Gezel befonov, nafesh yitzrei. If it's something that he sees that he could steal, there the Yetzirah is very strong. Shalai b'fanav lo nafesh yitzrei. But if it's not in a place where he could steal right now, so then the Yetzirah is not so strong. So therefore, there we're not so concerned like by Arayis. The next thing it said in the Mishnah was v'lo b'ma'aseh bereishis b'shnayim. Teaching ma'aseh bereishis should not be amongst 2. So the Gemara menanim mili. From where do we know this? So the Gemara the Tanur Rabbanan we learned in the Brayso it says ki sha'alna liyamim rishayim. You will ask on the days from before, from the earlier days, what happened. So pasuk in somewhere in Devarim somewhere. So the Gemara says, what does this mean? Yachid shayol, vein shnayim shayol. And it says sha'alna, singular term. 1 asks, but not 2. You don't teach it for 2. Yachal, yishal, adam, kaidim shenivra ilam. A person should interrogate and learn about what happened before the world was created. Talmud Laima, so the pasuk says, "L'menayayim ashabara lekim adam alaretz." You only ask and learn about from when the Eibusha created the Adam Rishon in the world, not before that. Lo yachal yishal adam yishayis yimei bereishis. So I would think that a person should not ask and understand things that from the time of creation going forward. Talmud Laima liyamim rishayim ashahayu lefanecha. That from that time you could ask. I would think a person could start asking questions about malamayla, malamata, malafana, malaacher, what's above the heavens, below the heavens, before creation, after creation. Talmud Laima, the pasuk says, from one side of the heaven to the other side of the heaven, which means from what there is in the creation that you ask. But more than that, what's before and after and what's in south and east, outside of the world, things that a person can't understand anyways, that's not something that a person should interrogate in. Okay, so now the Gemara says, comes out that we have 2 psukim that say this. Hashte, the nafkele, milimiktsea shamayim, vatktsea shamayim. It says that you should only ask from what's from one side of the heaven to the other, and you shouldn't ask more than what's outside of this. So, that pasuk that we brought before, that you could only learn and interrogate about from the time of creation. What do I need that pasuk for? I could learn it from this pasuk, milimiktsea shamayim. So the Gemara answers, the Bachir says, Mi boyele lekad Rabbi Elazar. We need that for Rabbi Elazar darshan. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Adam Arishain, when Adam Rishon was created, mino aretz ad l'rakia. He was tall from the ground all the way up to the rakia, to the sky. Shenema l'manayim ashabara lekim Adam ala aretz. The Eibusha created him on the ground, and then right afterwards in the pasuk says l'miktzeh shamayim, that he was tall all the way to the shamayim. Let's just finish the Indian here. And what happened? V'kivin shesarach. And then when he sinned by the chet of Eitzadas, hiniach HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yadav Olav, the Eibusha placed his hand on him, umiyatoi, and he minimized his height. Shenema, the pasuk says, Ochar v'kedem tzartani v'atoshas alai kapecha. Adam Rishon was created twice. He was created kedem, and then Ochar, the Eibusha placed his hand on him and minimized his height. Amar Rav Yudah Marav, Adam Rishon misoif ha'olam v'tzayfa yaya. He was as tall if you would lie him down, he would go from one end of the world to the other. From one end of the world to the other. And then when he sinned, the Eibishter minimized his height. So the Gemara concludes, wait a minute, we just said, what was the height of Adam Rishon originally? All the way to Shemayim. Now we're saying his height was from one end of the world to the other. So these two psukim are a contradiction. And says the Gemara, the height from the earth to the sky and from one end of the world to the other is the same shiur. And that's why it's not a contradiction.